welcome back to my channel, Hissy Books. I'm Camila. Today I'm bringing you my January wrap-up, and I read lots in January. I mean, I feel like it was a weird month, generally, but 12 books. 12 books / stories. So technically, this does include books that I started December. I was so intense at the end of December, like, because I started so many books when I was home in Canada. And I was trying to like madly try to finish them, but there's a couple I didn't. So I think there's maybe 3 or 4, don't remember, that I finished. So obviously finished them in early January, especially the books that were like print. We left Canada in the first week of January, so I was like, okay, I need to get them done before we go. So yeah. It also includes comics, because I went out of my comfort zone. It includes short stories and other kind of very short books. So I read lots of short things, and I was sick for about 3 weeks in January. It was like back to back. Oh. So when I got here, I actually really struggled to read print when I got here. So I listened to a couple audiobooks. A couple I started in December as well, but because I had them on audio, I didn't finish them early January. I continued kind of later. We're back in Scotland, and we've been doing lots of DIY. So sometimes, you know, a whole day of painting or scraping wallpaper, headphones on, yes. My average rating was 4.1 out of 5. So I read some like crackers in January. I've enjoyed that month a lot. The first book that I finished in January was Supergirl, Women of Tomorrow, which is a comic. This is written by Tom King, illustrated by Bilquis Evely. And this is because when I was in Montreal, I went to my brother's favorite comic book shop. So he brought me there, and he was like introducing me, and it was really cool, and I really enjoyed to be part of that part of his life. While I was kind of browsing, because he was picking a couple of things up, I was browsing, and I was like, oh, I'll buy something to try to, you know, always encourage like these independent shops. So I ended up just picking up Supergirl, Women of Tomorrow, because I think the guy who worked there told me it was about to be made into a movie. Anyway, I actually really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the drawings, and I really enjoyed, I guess, the story, which was really weirdly told, I guess, because it's in the narration and in the perspective of the little girl that she's helping throughout this like journey of revenge. And yeah, so I thought it was really good. It was really large. Like I didn't realize that comics could be this like long. So yeah, that was really cool. Then I read 3 books from my shelves in Canada. A couple of them that I'd owned. Actually, no. One that I've owned for many years. I think I bought it. I'd seen it online, and I asked my mom to go and buy it with me. I had a gift certificate, so she went to buy it. It's called L'érable et la perdrix. This is maple and... oh, I don't know what perdrix is. Quick Google. Partridge. You know, I was going to say pheasant. Partridge. The maple and the partridge, by Elisabeth, Cardin, and Michel Lambert. And this is a culinary history of Quebec through its foods. So they picked, I want to say there was 16 different foods, and they were giving a history of like basically since always. So like how the native people who lived in the region used it, and how the people, like the colonial people, how they got to it, how they changed, maybe how they approach, you know, like how they would cook certain meats or certain vegetables, certain herbs or fish. And it was really, really cool. Like I really enjoyed it. And I learned some really horrifying facts about porcupines that I will not share here, but if you're interested, let me know. Leave a little porcupine emoji. So yeah, that was really good. Then I also read M by Kim Thúy. This actually I read in like, I don't know, an hour or 2. I just sat in the lounge and I opened the book and I just read the whole thing. Oh, so beautiful. In this, it's almost a little bit like homegoing, where we start at a point, yeah, it's before the Vietnam War. So I think it's a French colonialist person who has like some sort of land or like position in Vietnam at the time, and then we sort of go through like all of the different eras through the lineage of his descendants and her descendants. And I thought it was so beautiful, and I think it's my favorite by Kim Thúy so far. I think I've read 3 out of 5, something like that. But yeah, my favorite up to now. Gorgeous. as always, I mean, she does an amazing job, and it was just so vivid, and some of it was like obviously horrifying, but just beautiful, beautiful book. And finally, I read, and I need to read it, Manikanetish by Naomi Fontaine. This is a book that actually my brother got me a book for Christmas. I already had it. So we went to the bookstore where he bought it from. It was an independent bookstore in Montreal as well. And I browsed and exchanged a book, but I was really pleased. And so this was one of the books that I ended up picking. And Naomi Fontaine is a native writer. And this is fiction based on her experience of teaching in sort of more remote region, and especially in places where there's a lot of native children in Quebec. So this is fiction. So this young woman who's, I guess, graduated recently from her education, like I guess a BA in education, something like that. And so she goes and starts being a teacher in a school, and it's like the relationship that she has with her students, like how she tries to connect with them, and how she tries to connect with her past and her heritage as well. So I thought it was really, really nice. I think, again, one that I read in like a day or two, whatever, because it's really short. Really good. I had some weird feelings about some of the stuff on abortion in this, but anyway. Then I read 3 more books. So kept getting rid. 3 more books from Canadian authors. I actually did really well in reading Canadian this month. And I think it's because partly I was home, so, you know. So the first one was 3 Holidays and a Wedding, co-written by Uzma, Jalaluddin, and Marissa Stapley. And this actually I started around Christmas because it's sort of taking place around the Christmas period, but also I think it's Hanukkah and Eid. I'm sorry, I always struggle. I think it's in English. I always struggle to know how to pronounce it. Anyway, so that's for the 3 holidays. And yeah, I thought it was really nice. Like the voices were, so basically we followed 2 characters. So clearly both author wrote just one character just through, and they meet on a plane, and then the plane ends up grounded in this town, a remote town in Ontario. I think it's in Ontario. And they sort of make the best of it because they were on their way to a wedding. And yeah, so it's about their relationship, like in love, but also with their families and with themselves, and like I guess their cultures and their jobs and their whole lives. It was really, I thought, well done. It was really fun. I really enjoy Uzma Jalaluddin's voice and her writing. I think this is my 3rd book by her, and I have one more that I have like on my TBR, like hopefully for this year. So yeah, really, really enjoyed that. Then I listened to, and it's one of the ones where I listened to in just one straight day of doing DIY. It was A Woman Talking by Miriam Toews. And I had a lot of thought about this one because I was like, okay, I did not expect this book to be written in the voice of a man. Immediately I was like, whoa, okay, so I felt like this was decentering the woman, but I didn't thought it was working really well, especially like within the culture of the fact that they didn't know how to write and they wanted a record of things, and like he was adding a little bit of his perspective of like, this is what happened and this is what happens in our culture, and him also being, it seems to me, outside of like this gender almost like binary, because the men don't really see him as a man and the woman also didn't seem to see him as a man but also not as a woman. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting, and I kind of want to learn more about that. But anyway, the women talking, yeah, it was really intense. Did not realize this whole time, and I listened to the whole thing, that this was not taking place in Canada. It's like when I watched a video by Julie from Bookworm Adventure Girl, and I was like, oh yeah, there was a thing at the beginning of the book that explains, and I just thought, oh, this is taking this as an inspiration, and that she's written one based in a community in Canada. No, I don't know where I got that from. Maybe it's because the movie is all white women that I thought that this took place in North America. Anyway, yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I really want to watch the movie. I'm very visual, so I feel like the movie is really gonna get me because I think it's gonna be a lot more visceral. And also I am wondering how they did, like in terms of centering the women more, and I wonder if they just discarded the male character from that situation. But I guess I'll see. If you've seen it, don't tell me. And then finally, the last Canadian book, I think the last Canadian book, yeah, that I read was Saqiyuq, Stories from the Lives of Three Inuit Women. This is a collaboration between the researcher and author Nancy Wachowicz. I feel like I keep mispronouncing that. And the Three Inuit Women, so it's sort of in partnership with them, and I didn't realize that, I believe this book probably came out in the 90s, because the most young woman, I'm pretty sure, was a boomer. Or like a early Gen X. So I was like, oh right, okay. I thought it was gonna be more modern than that. But we start in basically, I think it's the 1800s, if not the early 1900s, and we see the life of, you know, basically the grandma, and then her daughter, one of her daughters, who was the mom of the younger generation, and here the younger boys, the younger woman. And it was really interesting to see their different relationships to their families, to their, I guess, their partners, because like the first one was obviously married off incredibly young, and then it's sort of like the different expectations they have on them as, I guess, as Native women, especially from the Inuit communities in the north of Canada, and like their realities of like having to be flown down to like one of the cities to be able to have hospital treatment or give birth, and then just there was a lot, and it was really interesting. And I do appreciate that it was, they tried, I think there was actually a translator, because and I don't know if it's for all three, but obviously they were saying that in their own language. And yeah, it was really interesting to see and hear, because I don't know if it was last year or the year before, I listened to another book by I believe it's Inuit women as well, from the north of Quebec this time, and in that there was a lot of discussion at the end, in like the appendix almost, and talking about how in their language there's a lot of repetition and a lot of like these words that come back a lot. And I noticed it in this, even though in one of the notes at the beginning they said that the translation had tried to put that to a minimum, but I still felt it, so it was nice to feel sort of the Inuit language coming through. So yeah, so these were the Canadian books, and I feel like that was a lot. I'll try to run through the next few ones a bit faster. So this is a book I also started in December, and I ended up finishing a bit later in January, because of an audiobook I had access to. It's called Wordslut, A Feminist Guide to Taking Back the English Language by Amanda Montell, who you might know as the author of Cultish, because I feel like that book did a bit of rounds online, you know, on BookTube and stuff like that. So yeah, I thought it was really good. I thought it was really, really good as someone who loves words as well. But I've not studied linguistics, but like I love that there was a lot of explanation of like why certain things are being used, why women sound the way they do, they use certain expressions more, and what that has to do with the way that we relate to each other, you know, in the active listening and the trying to relate to the other. And I thought that was great. And how also the language is always evolving. And I did think it was really funny, because I think in the intro it says something like, yeah, language is always evolving. It's not just like some man in a room somewhere deciding like, this is the language. And she's like, well, except for French, which I will get back to later. And I was just like, bah! Because yeah, the Académie Française, and like lots of food for thought in this book. And I really enjoyed it. And it made me, I didn't want to really read Cultish before, but now I do want that, because I found her tone really engaging and really, relatable, but also like easy to understand, you know. Like I feel like she takes potentially hard to understand like ideas and vulgarizes them really well for someone who has like no background in linguistics, for example. Okay, that was longer than expected. But anyway, next was Rerun the Tides by Vendela Vida. Okay, this was a book that I put on my TBR ages ago, when one of my favorite booktubers, when I started booktube, she doesn't have a booktube anymore, but when I started booktube, she talked about this. This is based in the Bay Area, and so was this booktuber, and I think she really enjoyed that. I have no idea why I thought this was written by an Asian person. It was not. It was not. This was very much like it felt very centered on like white teenagers from the Bay Area, and, you know, the trials and tribulations of teenagers, and, you know, some of the lies they tell, and like one of them ends up being kidnapped, and I don't know, it just turns out the whole thing. Did not really enjoy it. I finished it because I sort of wanted to get to like what actually happened. But yeah, moving on. Next I read, and this is a short story. It's called Betel is Bad Magic for Airplanes by John Kasaipwalova from Papua New Guinea. This is because I struggled to find something from Papua New Guinea, and I heard that he was one of the best writers, and I found this short story and I was really happy. It's like almost 20 pages, I want to say, so it's not like one page, you know. It takes place between sort of, I guess, more native Papua New Guineas and I guess people maybe more from the colonizing side, and like their place within the system, I guess. So basically these young students are at the airport and then the police officers and security come and tell them to leave, and then they suddenly want to arrest them. Also instances of like code switching, which I thought was really interesting. It's sort of addressed as well. Like I thought it was really well done within the fiction, but also addressed as like a thing that people do. And yeah, so I thought it was really cool. I recommend it. It's available online, and yeah, it was really cool to find something new, and that was part of my reading around the world challenge, so one check. Next, I listened to the audiobook. I said that there was a lot of audiobooks. I listened to the audiobook The Lost Bookshop by Evie Woods. This is a hold I had from my Libby app for, I want to say, 4 or 5 months. So when it came, I was like, oh, I wasn't feeling it, but I was like, I need to, because like it'll be months again before I can get it again. So I listened to it, but I got into it really quickly. Although at the beginning, so there's 2 different timelines, one in the sort of early 19th century and one modern one. I didn't realize that the modern one was modern until a mention of cell phones, and I was like, oh my god, because the one of the main character acted, and I think she mentioned at some point she's quite from a rural background, but I swore that she was in the same timeline as the 1900s person, so that was really, I thought really surprising. But then we sort of go through her coming out of her shell and coming out of her, the way she's limited herself through not only her upbringing, but some of the stuff that happened to her. So she was in a domestic abuse, I guess, situation with her husband. I always enjoy something about Bookshop and about books and about discovering, I guess, your strength and your place, and I guess just more about yourself through books as well. So yeah, I thought that was really cool. And I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the character of Opaline, who's the character in the 1900s. One that I did not expect to have such an impact on me, because it looked a little bit like very, I guess, just general, like, you know, fiction book, you know. So yeah, good. And I finished a month. I ended up finally picking a physical book up from my bedside table one night, and I really got into the book. So basically, I started 7 Days in June by T.O. Williams. I started this book, I want to say I read the first chapter ages ago when I got this book, and I liked it, but I don't know why. You know, sometimes you read it and you're like, oh yeah, that's nice, I'll put it down, and then you don't pick it up again. I do that a lot, sorry. But anyway, so I picked this one up, and I'm a little bit like this young person being like reading my shelves, and I'm trying to, I haven't purchased any books in January. Like, I'm really pleased with myself. And yeah, so I'm trying to read my shelves. I read a couple books, as you might remember, from my Canadian bookshelves, but this is the first one from my bookshelves here in the UK. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed her writing and the characters and their love story, like trying to find each other. I'm never, okay, not never, but as an adult, I've become really disinterested in stories of love stories from teenagers, and especially over 7 days. What love story happens there? Teenagers is dramatic, it's intense, there's a lot going on, right? So in 7 days, these teenagers meet, they have a very strong bond to like really, really messed up things that happen, which I thought that this book went too far with the messed up things. Like at some point it became like, how many traumatizing things can you fit in one book? Because everything happened to these characters. It was like, it was a lot. And then sort of a parallel, not and then, but parallel, they meet in like current times, and they're both authors, and they meet at, I think it's like one of these chaired events when they're like, you know, with meeting with authors and they're talking about different things. And so they're both there and they sort of reconnect. And I guess they have some trouble reconnecting because of some of their traumas from the past. But yeah, I just thought it was beautiful. I love the main character, female character, and her daughter. Their relationship was gorgeous. And I haven't read It Ends With Us, but it felt a little bit like what I've heard of, like her trying to end the stuff that's been happening, because they say there's a curse on the women of her family, and she's trying to be like, this sort of ends with me. like, this is it. I want my daughter to just, you know, not have this trauma that we keep referring to. And I thought that was beautiful. And also I thought it was so beautiful. Oh no, that's the end. I can't talk about that. Anyway, I like the end. I like where the female writer sort of goes with her career and like with her personal discovery through her career. And also I like that it was a representation of someone with chronic illness. And yeah, so lots to talk about with this one. But I did think it was a bit much with the trauma, especially when this is advertised as like a love story, I guess. So yeah, so you get a lot of the harsh things and some of the beautiful and also sexy scenes, obviously. So yeah, a good one. And I will definitely look out for more by Tia Williams, 100%. So yeah, so those were the 12 things I read in January. I feel like it was too much. I tried to stop myself by the end. I was like, you won't listen to any more audiobooks at this point. I was trying to take it down because it was a lot. But I really enjoyed this month, except for like 1 or 2. Was it just 1 maybe? Yeah, actually just mostly 1. But otherwise, I had a great time. Yeah, so that's it for me. I think this has been far too long, so I'm going to wrap it up. But tell me in the comments. Wait, let me know if you want to hear that porcupine story. You probably don't, is what I'm going to tell you. But I know people are curious. And also, let me know what was your favorite book that you read in January. And if you have any recommendations for me. All right, thank you so much for watching. And see you back. Bye.